with Richard E. Elliott, 7734 East Minnezona, Minnezona, Scottsdale, Arizona, 85251. Phone 602-994-4526. At his home in Scottsdale, Arizona, on Wednesday, February the 20th, 1991, at 1 o'clock. Interview by Helen Earley of the Oldsmobile History Center. We'll just start at the beginning of your career, and you just tell us what you'd like to share.
Well, I started with Chevrolet Flint in 1932, and I worked there for 5 years, and then I went to Detroit Central Office Chevrolet, and then from there I went to Janesville, Wisconsin, and from there I went to Buffalo, New York, and from there I went to Muncie, Indiana, and from there to Atlanta, Georgia. And in 1949, or 1951, I came back to the corporation on the comptroller staff.
Were you always in the financial staff?
Yes, yes, yes. And so I came back to the General Motors comptroller staff in 1951, and stayed there until 1958, which time I went to Detroit Diesel as comptroller. And then I went from there 5 years later to Oldsmobile in 1963.
1963, and what was your position there? You started comptroller?
Comptroller. And I'd been comptroller of Detroit Diesel before that.
Mr. Wolfram made a remark at the party we had that he named all the different places he'd been, and and how he moved around from place to place. And he said, "What I'm wondering, was he that good or that bad?" Oh, that he was being moved all the time. Oh.
Well, then I came there, and Jack Wolfram was the general manager.
Well, it was May 1st, 1963.
May 1st? Could have been, yeah. Yeah. So then I had a succession of general managers I worked under. We started the new building, the new office building, in 1964, I think it was.
Okay, now that was building 70.
Yeah. And so...
where was your office in building 60 then?
On the second floor.
On the east side?
On the east side, yes.
About in the middle of the building?
Yes.
Now, who was your secretary?
Jane McFadden.
Jane McFadden.
Jane McFadden.
Yeah.
Okay. How many people did you have on your financial staff?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 120 or 130, something like that.
Did the payroll department fall under you?
Yes.
Both hourly and salary?
Yes.
I see. Who headed up the hourly payroll then?
God, I can't remember now. The hourly payroll, no, I don't remember. And the salary payroll was
Bryce Hill?
who?
Bryce Hill?
Yes, Bryce Hill. Yeah, I hadn't thought of Bryce Hill for a long time, but yeah.
Okay, was Charlie Early in hourly payroll? Did he head up hourly payroll in? Or Cliff Early, as he called him?
I don't think so. I know it was somebody else, but I'll think of it pretty soon.
That's all right.
But then I had a couple of assistants there,
Who were they?
John Niehaus was the assistant.
It's Niehaus.
Yeah,
Okay.
and he's the one that died driving down the street, had a heart attack and hit a tree and died.
Oh, really? Right there in Lansing?
Yeah,
Well, I didn't know
yeah, and
that. Remember what time that was?
He was on his way home, his wife was in the hospital with pneumonia. And
Oh.
he'd been to the hospital and was on his way home. Yes, I can tell you pretty close. It was about 1966 or, yeah, 66.
Well, just about the time we moved into the new building then.
yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah,
Who replaced Niehaus?
Murphy. Wasn't it?
no, Edmund, Jack Edmund.
Jack Edmund.
Yeah.
Okay. Who was your other assistant? You said a moment ago you...
Well, he wasn't an assistant comptroller, but he was kind of an assistant. He was a fellow that I worked with in Janesville. What was his name? Was it Mary?
Ethel and,
Newman, Chad Newman.
Chad Newman.
You remember him?
Sure do. Okay.
So Chad and Niehaus kind of operated on there, and then Edmund came in to replace Niehaus, and then had a succession of. Well, then Murphy came in to replace.
Murphy.
Came in to replace Edmund.
Okay.
And then we had Don Wilson and Ed Vogt. They were both, as Ed Vogt was there before he went away to Detroit or to Delco Products or someplace down in Ohio as comptroller. And he came back, of course, later. But getting back to general managers, they had Metzel followed Wolfram. And
What kind of a man was Wolfram to work with?
difficult. No, I didn't find him difficult, but a lot of people did. He was very dictatorial and hard to get along with, really.
everybody called him.
Everybody called him Mr. Wolfram, but me and I called him Jack, and Marge called him Jack. But
Well, he called me Marge.
but I remember he had a secretary, a red-headed secretary,
Herman Norton?
Herman Norton. And I remember in there one day, I was in there, and he was dictating. And she said to him, "Well, read that back again." He said, "Well, listen." And he said, "Open up your ears." And she said, "Well, if you wouldn't mumble so much, I'd get it." Nobody talked to him like that. Well, anyway, he was a big spender.
What do you mean by that?
He spent a lot of money on trips to New York and in the show business. And this General Motors people were always after me to cut down his spending. But that was very difficult, because I had a kind of I had two bosses, I had to work for General Motors, and then I also had to work for the general manager, too. So I would kind of had to tread a fine line. But anyway, Wolfram, he went to give a speech one time, and he messed it up badly, and so he took speech lessons. And one time he asked me to come over to the auditorium and listen to one of his speeches. And he was back in the back of the auditorium, and all of a sudden I heard, me. And I thought, what the hell is that? And he was tuning up, you know.
Oh, dear.
So he came out and he gave his speech with the smiles and the gestures and the whole thing, you know, and a real ham actor. And so but he mastered that, and he finally got to be a good speaker, excellent speaker. And he just mastered it and he took lessons from some lady that gave him speech lessons. So, but he was more interested in the theatrical end of the business. And a lot of those shows in New York, you know, we had, and where Oldsmobile sponsored them and stuff like that. And,
They were really extravaganza.
yes, yes, they were.
We enjoyed them.
And
Mhm.
one of the gals that was one of his favorites was this, still on television, Florence Henderson.
Yes.
And he'd had her to his home several times for parties and stuff like that. So,
How much would Old spend on one of those? Do
Oh,
you recall? Like
I don't know.
Our announcement, for instance, say in.
A lot of money. So, anyways, when the building 70 was almost done, we finally decided that the outside of it was what the architects want. We didn't like. So Bob Truxell and I went down to Detroit and looked at some of the buildings over there on around Woodward Avenue with a marble outside things. So we came back and got the architect to put marble on it. We went over to Metzel because Wolfram was sick and at that time. And so we went.
Metzel then was, what was
Well, Metzel was just chief engineer, but he was sort of the heir apparent, you know, at that time when we could tell. So we talked with Metzel and we finally decided to go ahead and put the marble on the outside of the building. And we did, and then we finished it up. And anyway, Metzel was a good manager. He was very different than Wolfram. He was, you know, down to earth type of fella, good engineer, and it was during his time that we got into the front wheel drive. And I was remarking the other day that we went to Cadillac and tried to get Cadillac to go to front wheel drive so to help with the tooling on the thing.
Now you mean Oldsmobile approached Cadillac?
Yes, and
Okay.
to see if they would help in the tooling on the thing. And they said, no, they wasn't interested in it. And they didn't think it would work, and they weren't interested in it. So we went away and went on our own. But then they eventually came to it, you know, because the Eldorado was front-wheel drive. So anyway, I guess Oldsmobile was going good in those days. And then we got, he retired and we got Belts. And Belts was an altogether different type of individual. If you know John
Yes.
Belts, well, he was brash and smart and aggressive and well liked by the corporation. They thought the world of him, and he had, if he hadn't died, he would have really gone up in the corporation because everybody liked him in the corporation, and he had a great future. Until one morning he called up and he said, Dick, he said, I'm not going to be in today. He said, I woke up this morning and I'm all yellow. And so I'm going to the doctor and said, see, what's the trouble? Well, he had pancreatic cancer. And they operated on him, and he just kept going down and down and getting skinnier and skinnier and taking more pills, and finally passed away. But he was a revelation to work with, you know. He all this time, you know, we had Jerry Radke, you know, in there too, you know.
Right.
And so then when he passed away, we got Howard Carroll, who was assistant engineer, chief engineer over in the engineering department. And he came in, and he was kind of I don't know about whether, I hope you don't get published in all these things I say about all these people.
Don't worry.
But anyway, Howard Carroll came, and he was a different type of fellow altogether than Belts. And he was very cautious type thing, very cautious. And nothing much happened during, well, he wasn't very long, and then he went there, and they replaced him with John Baker, and he came there from Canada, General Motors of Canada. And now John Baker, I saw him at a cocktail party, a reception for him, and one evening, and then the next day, I sat down with him for about a half hour, and told him I was going on my vacation. And, you know, I just, you know, just got there. He just got there, and I was going to take a month's vacation. So I said, well, all right. He said,
can you hold on? I'll go in the other room.
so he said, well, when you come back from your vacation, we'll get together. And that's the only time I ever saw John Baker. He went to Mayo's and died.
Did he have cancer?
Yeah.
Did they know that when he was transferred? I wonder.
I don't know. They must have known it because he died within,
About over a month.
yeah, after he got there, yeah. Well, anyway, Howard Carroll called me and off my vacation, and he said, "Well, you come on back and coordinate things there till we see what we're going to do," because John Baker hadn't died yet, and he was just very ill. So I cut my vacation short, and I went back and I sat in the general manager's office for a month and signed names and signed papers and stuff like that, and acted as coordinator, made a few decisions and stuff like that. Well, then he died, and they put Bob Cook in. And then shortly after that, I retired.
How was Mr. Cook to work with?
Good. Well, he and Cook and I were great buddies, you know, from back when we were both staff members, you know.
Right.
And so he was good to work with. And
Each general manager, I suppose, Dick, conducted his staff meetings differently. Do you remember anything unusual about any of them and the method of conducting?
well, let's see. Wolfram, when he ran the staff meeting, he dressed down people right in front of, you know, raised hell with people for not doing, you know, their job and stuff like that in front of the whole staff. And Metzel wasn't like that. Belts wasn't like that. And Howard Carroll wasn't like that either. No, Wolfram was the only guy that used to dress down to everybody in front of everybody else. And but the staff meetings were run every Tuesday, I think it was. We had staff meetings, and we had usually have a presentation, some presentations, and then we'd have business as usual to come up.
Would that presentation be by a specialized area,
Yeah.
like sales analysis?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
your own staff?
Yes,
financial
then
staff?
I would give the one, or either that or my assistant would give the presentation.
So
so-
each staff had an opportunity to give a kind of a
Yes.
condensed report on his area.
Yes, and
And were you given an assignment then by the general manager, or
Sometimes,
just
yeah.
as an update?
Sometimes you have an assignment to come back and do further work on it, or whatever you're talking about.
Well, now look, you mentioned the 1966 Tornado. That was a completely new car, really.
Yes.
How do you price a new car?
Well, we priced it where we thought would it's fall in the market and sell, not what it cost, because it cost more than to start with. It was a costly affair, and because we had to carry the tools ourselves, and the Saginaw steering gear had the front end arrangement, and that was an expensive arrangement. The engine was just a regular garden variety engine. Was 455 cubic inch engine. It was a big engine, and it was a dream to drive those cars. I drove one all the time as a company car. I always drove a Coronado.
Now, when did the experimentation or implementation of the front-wheel drive start? Would that be in the early 60s?
I suppose so. Yeah,
Drawing board,
probably. Down in the tech center, and Dorsimer's group,
I see. Okay.
and in those days, of course, Bob, the present chairman of the board now, Stemple works, an assistant chief engineer over there now. So he was there, and Frank Ball, and Dorsimer was the chief engineer.
How was he to work with?
Well, he was all right. He was kind of not as forceful as, say, Belts or even Metzel. But he was good to work with. He went down to the corporation then finally.
Yes.
As I think he's dead, isn't he?
Yes.
Yes, I believe he's dead.
Passed away.
Well, a lot of those old fellas, like Rollis and
Mr. Mahoney isn't very well.
yeah,
But
and Cutler,
Earl Cutler is gone.
and Bob or Jack White.
Yes. Matt Campbell.
Yeah,
A lot of them
yeah,
are gone.
and I see Lee Winter every once in a while out here at the GM meeting, retirees meeting.
Oh, do you? Is he living out?
He lives out in Sun City.
Oh, yes. That's west of here, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Well, now, actually, you reported directly to the corporation rather than to the Oldsmobile general manager.
Well, I reported to both of them.
Well, how could you do that? I mean,
Well, as long as it wasn't a conflict of interest or a conflict, I could do that all right. And the general manager, all the general managers respected the fact that I had to report to the corporation, But
now this time when Mr. Wolfram was ill, there were a couple of periods, as I recall, and you would be stepping in his position and making decisions.
no, I didn't. No. Well, I don't know. We didn't.
Was Earl Schoen there then maybe doing that?
So Earl Schoen left shortly after I got there, about
Yeah.
6 months after I got there. In the fall, I think, of the same year that
Yes,
I
yes,
got.
he did 63.
Yeah, and so.
But isn't that the setup to the comptroller?
Well, generally speaking, yeah, because we have a little bit different perspective than the chief engineer or the production engineer or sales manager or something like that. See, the sales manager when I went there was
Jones?
no,
No, Emmett Field?
Emmett Feely, yeah. Emmett Feely had came there from Chevrolet, I think.
I believe he did.
Yeah, I think he did, yeah. And then he was followed there by Buxton.
Who went to the corporation.
Yeah, then Berger followed in, and Berger went to the corporation. And we had a lot of bright young men. And John Gradenberger as a Cadillac, and
So really, the comptroller worked pretty closely with the staff head, especially the salespeople.
yeah.
And you mentioned that on pricing the Toronado, you couldn't really price it. You had to price it to sell in a market to sell. When did the Toronado, do you remember, start paying for itself?
Oh, I don't know. It went pretty good, you know, to start with.
Yes.
And we got the tools written off in a couple of years, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a great success, I think. And although had a lot of complaints about the wide door, you know.
Oh, yes.
Women didn't like it very well because of that big wide door.
Hard to close.
Yeah. And
accidentally, sometimes you would hit another car when you were
yeah.
trying to get in the car.
But now you'll have a little trouble understanding Metzel.
I noticed on the telephone that we'll take it slow, and I think it'll be all right. Now, you were there when we had the energy crunch, weren't you? Or maybe not. Maybe
No, I left there in
after-
'74.
Oh, yes, that came along in about 77, I think. I wanted to ask you, too, about when Oldsmobile or GM thinks about buying land.
Buying what?
Buying land, buying new
Oh,
property.
oh,
Yeah.
well. We,
Thinking behind that.
well, we wanted more parking, you know.
Mhm.
So we started to buy property.
Where first?
Well, the first thing we bought was that bar on the corner where Building 70 is.
Oh, yes.
There was a bar area, you remember?
Right. I remember that.
And then we bought the bar. And then we started north from there and west from there. And we went, Argonaut Realty Company did the buying and did the negotiating for that.
Okay.
And
Now, do you try to keep something like that more secretive?
well,
So the land...
if possible, yeah, but it was kind of tough to do. All the people that lived in there, they knew what was going on, you know.
See?
And but a lot of them we didn't buy. They just price was too much. Well, we just buy around them and tear down the buildings and leave the parking lot right up to their house and go and leave them as an island.
Yeah, there were two houses there on the north side of William, I recall. They're Olds Avenue, I guess it was. That were there for a long time, right in the old parking lot.
They wanted an exorbitant amount of money.
Okay.
So we shut them off and let them.
Well, then later, the Olds must have purchased that property for less because nobody else would want it.
That's right, and it was it was kind of a long, drawn-out procedure before we got the last one, you know, got all that parking lot paved and stuff like that.
Over a
Clear.
couple year period?
Yes, yeah, 2 or 3 years we were buying property, and Argonaut would do the negotiating, and they would come to us and say, do you want to pay this for it? And mostly it was my decision to say yes or no. And if it was too absorbent, I'd just say no. Okay? And they'd go away and leave the guy sitting. And so they got plenty of nobody got cheated in that thing.
No, I wouldn't.
Because those houses, weren't worth much of anything.
Well, no, right across the street from a plant.
Yeah, and kind of run-down houses and stuff like that, so some of them are pretty well paid off.
Well, Dick, were you there when they bought that property directly east of Building 70 and moved that large house up on the corner
Yes.
of Main and Washington?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, how much would it cost to move that house? That was quite an expensive proposition, wasn't it, to get parking
Yeah.
for employees?
Yes, that was a kind of I don't know why we went to that trouble or not, but it gave us a few more parking places, but not very many. There wasn't many places to park over on the east side over there.
No.
But and of course we bought a lot of property out along Building 3 and
Fisher's expansion.
they well, that was right around 70, I think, or something like that, around 1970.
What were they expanding to do?
Well, they had a new paint shop, and just for more capacity or something like that. This is back when we were going full bore, making automobiles on 3 or 4 different lines. They got the Tornado had its line, and the Cutlass had a line, and the big cars had a line, and so there was a lot of automobiles being pulled out of there. And
How many cars were we running an hour, would you think, then? Total.
Well, not counting the Tornado line, I think they had 110 an hour, and the others 110.
Were the A and the B cars?
Yes. And that was a lot of cars, 110 an hour.
How many engines would we be running then? Well, now this period would probably be in the early 70s.
Yeah, they had V8 and a V6, I guess it was, in a Cutlass for that.
Right.
Well, then that was one that was a 350 cubic inch engine, and the 425 was in the 98s and the Tornado, as I recall. So we only had just a handful of engines, which they got now. And then we got caught in the ringer, by using those Chevrolet engines and without telling anybody.
That was kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, so, well, we did that because we needed the capacity. We could make more cars than we could make engines. We couldn't make engines fast enough for the cars, and so we used Chevrolet engines, which were just as good and are almost as good. We don't never admit that they were as good as Oldsmobile engines, but they did the job. And then, of course, we got in trouble with all those attorney generals of different states and got sued and all that kind of stuff. But now they have a disclaimer on that and says that engines may be made by most anybody.
Or
You were there when we had the Detroit transmission fire, weren't you?
Yes.
Do you remember any unusual incidents about using Dynaflow transmissions?
No, I was with see, when was that fire? In 50?
I don't think I have that done.
No, I don't think I was at Oldsmobile. No, I wasn't at Oldsmobile. I was
you were at Diesel.
Detroit Diesel.
Okay.
And that's when they put old Skinner in charge of rehabilitating that plant. You know, all the machinery, or a good share of the machinery, was damaged. So they put Skinner in. You know, old Skinner used to be the general manager of Oldsmobile before Wolfram. And
so Mr. Skinner then, the corporation sent him to Detroit?
yeah, well, yeah, and he was a group executive of car and truck group executive at that time. But they sent him out there to and they brought people in from all over the corporation, and they hand them a little bunch of machines, and the next bunch of machines, you take those and get them fixed, and you take these and get them fixed, and they were back in business in a very short length of time.
What, 6-8 months?
Yeah, and if you'd seen that plant, you know, it was just totally destroyed, you know, plant, and they did an amazing job of getting back in business, and then they used the Dynaflow on Oldsmobiles, and everybody kind of griped about that, you know, because they didn't like the Dynaflow as well as they liked the Hydromatic. But it got the car to run and ran, and so I don't know what Buick uses nowadays. I suppose they still use well, probably the transmission, the Hydromatic probably now.
How many Dynaflows do you think we had to use before we were able to use Hydromatics again? You have an idea? 200,000?
Oh, I don't think that many.
Okay.
150,000.
150,000.
Something like that, yeah. So, but they got that transmission plant. Was a marvel job of rehabilitation. Everybody in the corporation jumped in on it. Every division had to send their master mechanic out there and get a handful of machines and go away and get them fixed and rebuilt. And old Skinner. Did you ever meet Skinner?
Yes. He was general manager when I came there in 42. And I remember him after he had visited the front. He came back and gave a speech to all of the employees in the auditorium of Building 64. I don't think there was a dry eye left. He just inspired you so. He was so dedicated to winning the war, so proud of the patriotism that he noticed.
He was a kind of a rough fella to work with, too.
I guess he used to go out in the plant often unannounced, too, to see what was happening.
Oh, yes, he used to drop by that Hydromatic plant on the way home on Friday afternoon, you know. And they always used to gripe about it because they like to get away a little bit, you know, early on Friday afternoon. But he'd stop on the way home and come in unannounced and stuff like that. So.
I guess he did that at Oldsmobile, too.
Did he? I don't know. I had a lot of contact with him when I worked for the corporation, and when I was on the comptroller staff, and I had a lot of contact with him on appropriations and things of that nature. I used to be in charge of preparing the appropriations for the corporation approval, and they'd have to go over with the group executives, and he was always one of the roughest ones to go over, you know.
Now, these would be appropriations for what?
Buying new buildings or new machinery or spending money. And, but I'd heard him on the phone, you know, dressing down his general managers when he was, you know, raising hell in them. So he was pretty rugged. But he got kind of mellow after he retired. He'd call me up every once in a while when I was up at Oldsmobile. He'd say, "Dick, this is Chuck Skinner. My neighbor, Lucius Clay, he says, would like to buy a car, and can you deliver it up there to him?" I said, lived up in Connecticut, you know. Well, I said, well, I'll check on that thing, and I checked with Gerstenberg, and he said, yeah, go ahead, we'll deliver it to him. But he always, when he wanted something, he was sweetness and light, you know. I guess he's dead now.
Yes, yeah, he died in a nursing home in the East in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Well, Dick, now, when you were there, we used to have a lot of factory drive-outs.
Yes.
And the customer coming in could save money by doing that.
Yes.
What was the thinking? Were you there when they changed to this new type of method of assessing transportation charges?
Well, yes, I think so. And the thinking was that you make more money that way. The corporation put that in there, and yeah, you used to be able to just pay the freight to Lansing, you know, the regular Lansing freight, and then they charged it to wherever you lived, and so it didn't make any difference with it. A lot of people still came and got their cars because they wanted them to drive back and on vacations and things of that nature, but it wasn't the financial advantage as it was when you could buy them at Lansing FOB price.
Your transportation.
Yeah.
Did Oldsmobile ever hire college students or young students to drive Oldsmobiles to some distant point? Now, we've heard that from a number of sources that, yes, they did hire college students, like maybe they'd have a dealer in Portland, Oregon, for instance, who would order 25 Oldsmobiles. Would they hire MSU, say, for instance, students to drive those cars out there to the dealer? Rather than putting them on a train or on the...
I wasn't aware of that.
No, we weren't either, and yet we've heard it a couple of times. And
No,
so
I
thought
don't.
I'd check it out.
Could have been some individual, you know, might
But there
have.
was no factory.
No,
right?
as far as I know, there wasn't. So no. And,
How do they arrive at the different discounts on, like, if you buy a car, say your discount is 20% on the 88, and on the accessories it's a 15% discount for an employee? How do they arrive at those discounts?
I don't know. They used to be, you know, you could you get dealer cost. You buy them at dealer price, you know.
And the dealer price would be about how much over what it cost the factory? How much would that have been?
25%. And the first thing that came down, the dealer price was less 25, and you could buy them for 25% and 25% on the options and accessories. Well, then they got the monkeying with that, and finally they got down. I guess it's 18% now. and 15 or something on the accessories or something. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I know that there's a difference. It's lower.
It's lower than it was. But and company cars used to be, you could get 35% on a company car with 3,000 miles on it, and that was a good buy in those days, and 25% on the options. So, but then they quit that too. So
Now there's a different type of incentive program.
yeah, they have. You can get one dealer price if you get it made. You can order it and get it made and shipped. Or if you go in and buy one off the floor from a dealership, you get 5% off from the list price, and then whatever deal you can make with the dealer.
Did you work closely with Schoen or do much with Mr. Schoen?
Well, no, not much. He, when I came there, he just turned the actual running it over to me, and he went off and did work with for the general manager on plant reports and things of that nature.
Kind of a special assignment.
Yes, yes. He didn't enter into the day-by-day operations.
I see. Now, Doris Johnson worked for you, didn't she?
Yes, I got her from the engineering department, and she came over there in about the first '64, I think, when Jane McFadden left,
Okay.
and she was there until I left. And
Now, Jane must have been fairly efficient. She'd been
yeah,
on the financial staff many years.
Who?
With Jane.
yeah, oh yeah,
With the controllers.
yeah. She was a kind of run things a little bit, don't you think?
I liked Jane very much. Jane and I were good friends.
Mm-hmm.
But she kind of was a take charge girl, and I think she dropped Earl Schoen's name along a little bit, you know.
As Mr. Schoen.
Or Mr. Schoen, yeah.
Never called him Earl.
They'd always called Mr. Schoen and Mr. Schoen, Miss McFadden, and even when they were going together, you know, all the time, and which was just all the time, I guess.
I guess she's been a real big help to him since he's retired. He sounded great on the phone when I called him to set up the appointment. He checked his calendar and said it was fine. But she called back and said that he just wasn't up to it. And then Bob later, his son, told me that he really wasn't able to do the.
Let me ask you about Charlie. Is Charlie still alive?
Charlie Earley?
Oh.
No, he has passed away. He's been gone 4 or 5 years or more. Larry Lemon, did you remember him?
No.
Well, he took Charlie Earley's place as head of hourly payroll. Let me see, speaking of Charlie Woodworth was on your staff, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
What was his job? What area was he in?
God, I can't think.
Doesn't matter.
I can't think now of them.
So actually, Dick, the comptroller's responsibility is to kind of keep a check on the spending.
Yes.
And what about now, like the new building 70? That to kind of each year the amount you owe on it decreases because the building is a little older. You kind of amortize it off. Or how do you?
No, they just.
How do you do that?
None. That was just as paid for as it came, as it was built.
I see.
So,
Were you ever involved in when you asked the city or Oldsmobile did for a tax abatement?
no, that was after I left there. Bel- Boat did
Yeah,
that.
Boat.
Boat did that. No, we didn't ask for any tax abatement. And, in fact, they didn't even have such a thing as that when I was there, I don't think. That was kind of a new wrinkle. We used to wrestle around with the Board of Water and Light, you know, and we bought steam from our Board of Water and Light, and electricity too, you know. And so we used to have a lot of sessions with that old guy that ran the thing.
Earl Brush?
Yeah. So, and I got interested in the, well, I was on the Chamber of Commerce and United Way. I was president of that one year, and
St. Lawrence Hospital.
huh?
St. Lawrence.
Yeah, St. Lawrence Hospital. I was 2 years president of that, and on the board all the time I was there, and so I liked that hospital work. And in fact, we built a new hospital while I was, you know, there. And we got Sister Mary Janice from
Grayling.
Grayling, yeah. She was up at the Grayling Hospital, and she was something. Yeah, she was something that, huh?
We still hear from her.
She's
She comes out here and we have dinner or something.
she was a good administrator. I'll tell you, she was a real goer, and she'd get right out there in the parking lot when they were building a hospital and fight with the contractors and stuff like that. She was a good one.
The corporation encourages executives to be on boards and support civic organizations.
Yes, but not any bank boards or anything like that.
I see. There's
I was invited to be on the Michigan National Board, and the corporation said no. Can't
so
be.
a savings and loan board would be the same.
Yeah.
I see.
Anything else we don't like.
Yeah.
Banking institution, then they discourage that.
And they not only discouraged it, they just said no.
Well, then, is there any other type of business that the corporation would discourage or wouldn't allow one of their employees to be on? Can you think of?
Well, I think they would probably discourage you, and probably, you know, like if I wanted to be on the board of Rio or something like that. I'm sure they wouldn't let me do that either.
Okay.
So, only just those service organizations and,
Right.
you know, Red Cross and
Cultural type
yeah,
too.
yeah,
I see.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well, you served on a number of boards then while you were.
yes,
We got a lot of them up there. He was gonna throw them away and I
Oh
won't.
my, no, don't do that.
well, yes, I was, I was thinking one night, you know, I went to a meeting at the United Way, and it was a cold and slippery and snowy night, and I parked across the street from the YW over there, and right next to me was Hortense Kennedy got out of her car. So it was slippery in the, you know, so I grabbed her arm and we walked up the street, slip into the slide, and I thought, my God, anybody see me, you know, with a black, you know, and back in those days, you know, you didn't have quite as much latitude.
But you were a gentleman.
Well, yeah, she was flipping and sliding, and
She was a lady.
Mona Cutler was a big mover on I think she's dead, and
Yes.
Yes.
is she? Is she?
That was Howard, or Harold Cutler's.
Yeah. Yeah, she had lupus. And I don't know what he had. He died of something or other.
I don't know either.
But the only person I know around there anymore is Peggy McCourt.
Yeah.
She's still there, I understand.
She subs as the receptionist in the administration building lobby.
She does?
Yeah. Since Marion Crow's retired.
Yeah.
Peggy does a good job.
Well, some of those people in the accounting department are still there, but I don't know them.
That has changed. I don't know many people up there either. Well, were you there when they were beginning to discuss IBM and the electronic method of accounting?
Oh yes, we had that. Yes, we.
Now, did you come in at the start of that, or was that an ongoing thing when you came to Lansing?
Well, it was sort of a ongoing thing, but not very well developed. Bill Murphy was in charge of that. And
how were, say, for instance, payroll records kept prior to the more sophisticated accounting system?
Well, they were on IBM, the hours times the rate and stuff like that was on there.
Was that all figured electronically?
Yes, and then we go down to Detroit, and Detroit worked on it, and Detroit made the payroll orders out, and we used to gather them up and bring them back to Lansing to pass out. And
When you say payroll orders?
the checks.
The checks,
Yeah.
I see.
So they were run down in Detroit.
So there's both hourly and salary?
Yes, and the salary, we didn't have anything to do with that. That was salary payroll orders. Well, I guess they did too. They sent those up and we passed them out. Yes, we did.
So actually, the main bookkeeping was done at Detroit at headquarters,
Yes, on payroll. Yes.
rather than each division doing its own?
Yes.
I see. Now, when did that change to each division doing its own?
I don't know that it ever did. Maybe it did. I doubt it. I think it probably would be the other way around. They'd got more centralized
Okay.
all the time. So,
But you would send Oldsmobile on, let's say I don't understand the electronic bookkeeping, that's why I'm asking such dumb questions, but the Oldsmobile would send to Detroit some electronic, like the names and the social security number and the hours worked and overtime of, say, an hourly employee, of all hourly employees. And so the actual bookkeeping was done in Detroit, and the check would then be brought back
Yes.
to Lansing.
mm-hmm.
I see. Do you remember any labor relations problems while you were there?
No, I don't.
In Flint and Chevrolet, you had real labor problems. They had a big walkout. He was in Chevrolet.
Oh yeah, I was working the night they had the big riot in 1936, and that's when Walter Reuther used to walk up and down the street with a megaphone and stuff like that. And they had a big riot, and the police came, and the rioters upset the police cars and set them on fire, and threw door hinges at the police, and that thing finally ended up with about 30 guys with rifles walking down the street and settled that thing, and then that was the start of the UAW.
Oh, no, it was in 37.
Yeah.
And you were comptroller of?
No, I was just a bookkeeper those days.
At Chevrolet.
Yeah.
he called me. He was working that night. Back in those days, they worked probably half of the nights. We didn't have them at home. They would work overtime. No overtime pay because you were salary, of course. And he called me from the office and he said, I can't come home. We're having a wild time out here. The fighting and the streets and that's when they took over some plants, didn't they? Set down.
Well, they were in the Fisher Body plant across the street, and then they.
These were hourly employees.
Yes.
That were dissatisfied with what?
Uh-huh.
Why were they dissatisfied?
They weren't getting enough pay.
They wanted unionize, and
I see.
they weren't unionized yet. Or I mean, they were not entirely unionized.
Well, Walter Luther got that all started.
Yeah, at the same time that they had the fight at the overpass at Ford, you know, that was a famous fight, you know, and
Yes.
stuff like that.
But were working conditions is so bad at Chevrolet that they had to go to this length, do you think?
I suppose so. Yes, the men didn't have much to say. There was a superintendent named Benny Waterlow, and a little cocky guy, and he just used to walk down the line and he'd look at anybody and he didn't like them. You're fired, out your door, go. And they had no recourse, and that kind of stuff went on, and they brought it on themselves. They brought, the unions, they brought them on, the company brought them on themselves.
Yes. I could see that.
But I guess they had some strikes and stuff at Oldsmobile before I got there too. But mostly Oldsmobile, well, it was a family. We had less problems at Oldsmobile than any of the other car divisions.
That's what I'd always understood too. In fact,
Because there was a family. Father worked there, and a son worked there, and so it was whether it was a benign treatment, I don't know. But old Mahoney was the personnel director, and you know him. And so I think they got along. I don't think they ever had really a strike at Oldsmobile.
there never was a local strike at Oldsmobile. The time that they struck after the war was the national strike.
Oh yeah, that was in 1945. That one, yeah.
Right, right.
And that was a 110 days old strike, and
Really, neither the company nor the union gained.
no. I started at Chevrolet, and I got $125 a month.
And that was
Well,
in
that was a lot of money in 1932.
1932.
And I worked 2 weeks and got cut 10% by getting one of those, I don't know, $112.50.
And we lived for 2 years.
And we were married in those days, too. And we'd be married 60 years, you know, on June and 19th of this year.
Really?
Same woman.
Yeah,
That says something.
60 years of marriage, a blissful marriage, yeah, sort of. And,
Is it blissful? Let's just put married.
So,
Well, you mentioned 1937. Now that was when the automatic safety transmission first came in on Oldsmobiles. Did you hear anything about that at Chevrolet? Were they discussing a type of automatic transmission?
we had a different kind of transmission in Chevrolets called I forget what. You remember the name of it?
Yeah, I don't remember the name. I remember my first car with it. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
We took a trip out. We bought a car in 1947, company car, and
Chevrolet.
yes, and we went out to California. Took the two kids, and Marge and I drove out to California, and we were going along, and all of a sudden it jumped out of gear, and so it kept jumping out of gear, and finally I went up Pikes Peak, of all places to drive. No brains, and, so coming down Pikes Peak, it kept jumping out of gear and going like hell, down the hill and stuff like that. So we finally got it fixed. I'll try to think of the name of that.
Automatic gear shift.
Automatic transmission that Chevrolet had. But the Hydromatic, when did it come in?
1940 Oldsmobiles in the fall of 39.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you said 37, but...
Well, we had what we called the automatic safety transmission in 1937, which was the forerunner of Hydromatic.
Oh. Well, I'm not familiar with that.
I just wondered if
No. Turbo Glide, that's what we...
Turbo Glide. Oh,
That's what we had for Chevrolet, I think. Oh.
Well, now let's see, you came in 63, and of course the rocket engine was going strong then.
Yeah.
And the latter part of 68 and into the early 70s was really the muscle car era when we were building those big 455 engines.
Yeah, and they bought those 442s,
442, yes. Now that you mention that, what was the thinking of bringing out a performance car like that?
Well, everybody else was doing it, Pontiac and Ford and stuff like that. So the racing, they was use it in their advertising. That's back in the days, when they didn't hold down to 55 miles an hour,
Right.
And but then we also used it as a pace car for Indianapolis.
1949. That was the first time.
So that was a 442 and a 442.
No, that was the 88, the rocket engine in 1949. And in 88, we didn't bring the 442 out until 1964, a mid-year.
Oh yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah.
That was the police car option.
Yeah. We had one of those that we drove, and I drove it down to Detroit one day, a company car, 442, and going down Woodard Avenue, and all these young bucks, and every time I come to a stop sign, they'd pull up alongside of me and start, wanted to race down Woodard. I said, no thanks, I'm just not going to get racing with youngsters.
Well, Dick, there seemed to be a period in Oldsmobile's history when they sort of held back on entering races, and they didn't really participate in racing. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, I think the corporation put the brakes on racing. All the divisions kind of had to pull back a little bit.
What was their reasoning there?
Well, that was about when they talked about speed kills, and things like that, and
safety became
and then you start advertising, that big high-speed stuff, and it was kind of counterproductive a little bit.
Okay.
Now they're back in it again.
Yes. Full feet.
Yeah. Oldsmobile's in it. And of course, the Oldsmobile and that W30 that Marge had, that was a kind of a muscle car.
Oh, yes.
That now.
Pardon me?
You have that now. I mean, you have it down in Lansing.
Yes,
my
the
W30.
Herstol's.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
That was a honey. That's a good car.
Well, it had a 350 cubic inch engine in it, and
More downshifts.
So-
Shifter.
so now she drives a Cutlass.
I'll have to show you my car.
I'd like
The
to see it.
International. You
Oh,
know
it's
that?
a nice looking car, isn't it? I'd like to see yours. Dick, how were decisions made, major decisions? Could each division make its own, or did you kind of ask the parent company?
Well,
guidance?
within limits you could make your decision, but
What kind of decisions were you kind of limited in and had to go to the corporation for your approval?
well, any new buildings or anything, we had get approval from the corporation, and any big tooling and machine or acquisitions or stuff like that,
Okay.
we'd have to go with the corporation. And then it finally got to the place before I left there, that the corporation got their nose in all the business and all your product programs and stuff like that had to be approved by the corporation.
You mean if you had a new design of a car?
Yes.
Where before that had been pretty much up to
Well, yes,
our
it
own
kind of a little bit
designs?
left to your own decision, but then the corporation finally got into it, and
I read yesterday, I was at a meeting in the automotive news where the chairman had made the remark that from now on there were going to be different cars. We were not going to have all of them look alike. And I hope that works, because he said, as it is, Chevrolets and Cadillacs are, they all look
Much
alike.
different.
well, they have. He can only do that so far because they use common panels, in these cars. You got so that there's bound to be a certain look-alike.
Parts interchangeability.
Yes, and
But it used to be that even among car lines in our own division, Oldsmobile, there was quite a distinction between like Series 88 and 98.
yes, and well, there still is.
Can't they go back to that? You said that they couldn't do that because of the panels being the same. Couldn't they go back to what they did back in those days?
Well, they're
We used to be terribly competitive, I remember, with Pontiac, for instance. We were more competitive with Pontiac and Buick than we were with Ford. I mean, when they'd say Oldsmobile is number 2 this year, that was great, because we outdid Pontiac,
Oh yeah, our race all the time was with Pontiac and Buick, not with the Ford and Plymouth and stuff. So,
Mhm.
and that was kind of healthy, so they kept like all the car divisions vying for a position.
Competition does good. It sparks
Yeah,
ingenuity too.
Yeah.
How often did you go to the corporation for a meeting? Was there a set date each month?
Some meetings, yes, were set, and then other times there'd be special meetings and stuff like that. I did quite a bit of running back and forth down to the building.
Oh, you retired when? Dick?
74, February 74,
February of 74.
17 years ago.
Doesn't seem possible.
No, it
does
doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Well, you've had a long and fulfilling career.
Yes, I had a few physical problems, but
Well, you look great.
He's he's got a wife that takes good care of him.
I can see it.
Tell him about your story.
Which, the cute one,
Yeah.
about the zebra?
No,
Oh,
about my problems.
oh, we had, when he had his 80th birthday, we had a number of people like the Metzels and Fred Lindbeck and, you know, some of the older people out here. We had a party, and I got up and I was saying how many years, you know, he was and how glad I was to have him all those times. And then I said, you know, he's had a couple bouts with heart problems and a couple bouts with cancer, and now he has AIDS. And everybody went, and I said, one in each ear. Oh, Marge, isn't that cute? Isn't that cute? Well, everybody brings that up to me, and they say, now, what are you going to do the next birthday?
You'll think of something, I'm sure.
Somebody asked me the other day, I guess it was over to the auditors, he asked me if you knew that I was going to say that. And I said, no, I didn't know it myself. I said,
That made it more exciting.
Well, we're in pretty good health. I had prostate cancer, and then last year I took radiation treatments for that. And apparently I haven't heard from him lately, so
Well, that's good news.
I don't know whether it's shriveling up or not, that tumor.
We have Mayo's right out here, you know.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yes, practically in our backyard, Mayo's opened a clinic out here. And they have very, very fine doctors. Now they have, they're doubling their size, and they started out with 90 doctors, and they now have 120, and the last I heard, they're going to double with this new thing. They're going to have over 200 and doctors.
They got a lot of people in there from all over the country. See, there's Mayo's here, and then Mayo's in Jacksonville, and then the one in Rochester, Minnesota, which is the home office, of course. But, God, you know, a bunch of old people, and you go out there, and they have kind of like, I think it's about 5 floors of activity. And you go to different floors for different things. And they have seating arrangement out, and it looks like, you know, like a theater, you know. And you go and present your ticket up in front, and then they send you this way and that way and stuff like that. And you look out there, and some days, God, all those seats are filled with a bunch of old people and wheelchairs and canes and walkers, and the parking lot's all full of foreign cars, foreign license plates.
But they are very, very thorough, and our doctor is the chief of staff, and we're both very fond of him. And I've had some problems I've been working with. And you know, about once a week he calls on the telephone and he'll say, well, Marge, I don't want to bother you, but I was just wondering how you were doing. Where on earth can you find a doctor that would do that?
That's really unusual.
And even when we're in Pinetown, he calls up, and that's long distance, and he calls and said, I just want to be sure and checking, and he'll ask me certain questions. You know, is this, how's this, how's your weight, you know, and I think
A real concern for you as a patient.
Yes, yes.
Good.
It makes you, he's concerned, and it makes you feel like most doctors at our age just kind of look at you and think, well, what the hell are you griping about, because you should be dead anyway. you know,
Some-
that's the attitude you feel. And when somebody takes the effort to call, you'll say, now don't you dare say, I'll say to him, well, I think I'm all right, I think it's just a little old age, and he'll say, March, don't you dare say that. Even if it is old age, you have a right to be comfortable. That's his attitude.
How's your health?
Very fine. Very fine. Dick, let me ask you, we seem to be kind of wrapping up the highlights of your career here. Can you think of any one or two things contribution or suggestion that you made while you were with Oldsmobile that was productive, that you felt you personally made a contribution, other than the job you were paid to do?
Well, I can't think of anything really that very startling that I did. I did what I was paid to do, pretty much.
You did a good job.
Well, I got along pretty good with the general managers and with Detroit, and
That's important.
yeah, and got my 42 years in.
42 years.
Yeah,
That says a lot for you and for the company, too.
so
Only job he ever had,
Oh,
yeah.
other than delivering newspapers.
well, can you think of something you'd like to add to this great interview?
No, I can't think of anything. I was very fortunate to go to Oldsmobile, I tell you. I was kind of in a small division down there at Detroit Diesel, and we made engines for trucks and buses and generator sets and stuff like that. But it wasn't a very outlook much on the thing. So when I got transferred to Oldsmobile, I think I'd just gone to heaven, you know, really, you know. Because all the men in my group wanted to be with the car division. So.
How was Oldsmobile viewed by other divisions and General Motors per se?
Well, I don't know. Back then it was viewed, I think, when I was there, as pretty much of a leader, you know. We led all the other car divisions excepting Chevrolet in sales and profitability, and so had a lot of respect for Oldsmobile people. And they keep putting new general managers in out of the ranks until they got John Baker in there, and I don't know where they got him. Eddie Cole always wanted to get some of his buddies in from some of these other divisions, and we kind of fought that along and tried to keep our own homegrown guys in there as general managers.
Sure.
I do remember that they had a lot of trouble transferring people out, because the corporation would say, we want so-and-so or somebody. They didn't want to go. They didn't want to leave Lansing, didn't want to leave Oldsmobile, to go to the corporation.
Well, a lot of them had 4% mortgages, in Lansing, and they get transferred to Detroit, for instance. Well, God, their living expenses would double, and they get a new mortgage at 10% and all that kind of stuff. So they didn't feel like they were going to make very much headway. So they were difficult to get anybody to go to Detroit. At the lower levels, go.
Well, Dick, you and I think in the letter I mentioned we have this interview agreement. We've had GM clear this agreement, It's a little form here. We ask each interview, or interviewee rather, to sign, take a moment and read it over.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just shut this off, and I'm gonna ask you to sign one too, Marge, because you've made a contribution here too, if you don't mind.
Okay.